It's finally raining. Nice. So, let's make biscuits. It's still raining. So, good morning guys. Welcome to Appalachia's Homestead. We're finally getting rain. Oh my gosh. I think we've had one rain shower in the last month. Some of the folks in the area of East Tennessee and Western North Carolina have been getting some of these rain showers. They have gone around us every single time, and finally we are getting some real rain. So, we get to rest just a little bit, cool down, but let's celebrate that with some homemade biscuits. You can make homemade biscuits. Now, here's the thing that you need to know, and this is what your granny knew. She knew how to take anything in her kitchen and manipulate it any which way she could or can still and make glorious meals. My Nana can still, she has this, it's like magic, y'all, okay? It's because they were forced to work with what they have. So if you have a certain biscuit recipe that you prefer, that's fine. But I encourage you to make things like this different ways. Breads, biscuits, cornbread. Don't be afraid to use different things. Sometimes you may be out of an ingredient, or maybe you're making it at someone else's house and they don't have what you use. You have to learn to improvise. And there are a gajillion different biscuit recipes. And that noise that you're hearing is coffee, baby. So I'm going to use a few different things today. I have used these before in different ways in different videos in the past. Here's the basic bottom line. You basically need you need 5 good ingredients for good biscuits, okay? Let's talk about that. First things first, I will encourage you to have a nice sifter. I finally broke down and bought a new sifter recently, a couple months ago, because my other one was just worn out. So this is not an ingredient, obviously, but having a sifter, they're not expensive, is a handy tool to have. You can also use like one of those little strainers and just like dust it through if you don't have, it's basically that right there. But these are nice to have, okay? They're not expensive. You can get them just about anywhere, Walmart, Target, Amazon, whatever. So just want to mention that. Okay, today when I make my biscuits, you see me often using white lily flour. Today, I'm going to be using the stuff from Aldi's. This is just all-purpose flour. This is your plain flour, so there's no other additives, if you will, in it. I'm going to use it because I had one of my bags bust open, and I had to put it in here, so I'm trying to use this up. So we're going to test it out. Now, I am going to sift it, so you're going to see it being sifted. I'm going to measure around 2 cups. I don't exactly measure, but I'm going to give you a rough estimate. See, that's another thing, is when you start making different foods often and you get pretty decent at it, you're going to know. It's just kind of like a natural thing. But here's what you need to know about making biscuits. So like I said, I'm making biscuits, but I'm using your plain flour. Now, some of you might prefer to use your SelfRising flour. SelfRising flour is not plain flour. It has additional items in it, which I am going to add. So I'm cooking from scratch. I'm baking from scratch here. So let me show you what I'm talking about. That coffee's going to be good. So when you buy your SelfRising flour, it's already measured in your baking powder. So that is in the mix already. Also, you're already going to have in there is your salt, okay? Now, so that's 3 ingredients total into 1. So I'm talking about 5 for my biscuits. So what else am I talking about? Today, I'm going to be adding already opened butter. You can also use lard. You can also use like a Crisco, okay? You need a fat. The flavor's always in the fat. That's the goodness of that biscuit, y'all. So I'm going to be using some butter and putting it in there, but you always want to have a fat. When we use that heavy whipping cream, as you've seen in some of those videos, that is fat. I'm not doing that today. I'm going back to the basic and I'm going to add in my single fat, which today I'm choosing butter. Okay, so that's what we're going to be doing there. Now, we could make this a 6 ingredient deal, but I'm not. I'm going to be putting in some plain milk. I don't have any buttermilk. I despise store-bought buttermilk. Don't like the flavor, don't drink it, don't buy it unless I absolutely have to. So I use plain milk. If I want it to have like a clabbered flavor to it, like buttermilk, I will add vinegar. I've done that in many, many videos. I will add vinegar to about a cup of milk and I'll let it sit for a few minutes and it will start clabbering up. I'm not even messing with that today. I'm just like not in the mood. I'm just gonna go with plain milk and go on with my life. Some people don't like that, so they use plain milk. See, this is what I'm saying. You kind of go with what you like and what you don't like. Now, I will say this. If you are adding buttermilk or if you're going to add your clabbered or soured milk to your mix, you will add baking soda. That's why you see that in some recipes. I'm not doing that today because I'm just going to be using plain old whole milk. So let's get started. And what I want to stress to you is when you're making anything like this, you want to mix your dry goods first. So what I'm going to do is have the flour sifted. I'm going to add the salt. And then I'm going to add the baking powder. I'm going to add about a big whopping tablespoon in here. If I'm doing 2 cups roughly of the flour, I'm going to add about 3 teaspoons or a whopping tablespoon, as I call it, of your baking powder. Don't be afraid of it, folks. Just plop it in there. And, a nice heavy pinch of salt. And then I'm going to sift this around. I'm going to mix this so that you don't have a big old piece of salt on one side. And then you take a bite of a biscuit and wow, it makes your eyeballs roll back. Now, I do want to mention before I get started, I have my cast iron griddle. That's my favorite thing to make my biscuits with. I love the flat 10.5 inch griddles, 10 1/4, 10 1/2. I have several of those. I just washed it up real quick just to make sure it was nice and shiny. And I have put it into the oven that is preheating at 425. I've made biscuits at 400. I've made biscuits at 425. I've made biscuits at 450. Some people go all the way up to 500 degrees. You're bold, baby. You got some brass. But I'm at 425. Everything is preheating, getting ready to go. So now we can mix our biscuits. I'm going to measure about 2 cups. This is a 1/2 cup spoon scoop. So that's why you're going to see me dip into that like 4 times. But I'm going to plop it into my sifter, making sure I don't fall here. Just plop it in there. No stress. Flour looks good. Flour looks good. All right, so let's go ahead and sift this much. All right, 4th one. So that's a 1/2 cup each there. So that's 2 cups of flour. And I'm just going to sift it. You would want to sift your flour regardless whether it's your plain flour or your self-rising. And I don't know if you saw that flash, but honey, that was lightning. So it's nice and soft, fluffy. I moved my flour over so I don't knock it over. So now we're going to add a little bit of salt. Remember I said to add, what? Looks good. Looks good. Okay, so all I'm going to do is just lightly mix all the dry ingredients. You can use a fork, whatever. Run your hands through it, whatever. I don't, because I'm trying to still get everything together. So just using the whisk. Just go back and forth a couple of times and even everything out. Now it's time to add your fat. Like I said, you can do Crisco, you can do lard, or you can do ice cold as possible, plain butter. Some folks put it in the freezer and grate it. I don't do that. I just go with whatever. So you want it really cold, and we're gonna do, I don't know, 4 to 6 tablespoons, just a bunch of plops, and put it in there. And then we're gonna grate it up. I'm going to grind it up with my fingers because what we want it to kind of have the consistency of like a cornmeal. It's going to be more coarse. So regardless of what fat you decide to use, it being the dry goods here especially, and even with your lard, you really want it more of a coarse type of meal. So that's what we're going after. So I'm just going to take my knife here And I'm just putting it in pieces, y'all. You can see, no big deal. I mean, don't sweat the small stuff. It's just butter. Okay, so I put my butter in, you put your fat in, and I'm simply going to just grind up the butter. Like I said, some people prefer to use grated butter. They think that that's more of a shortcut. I don't do that. You know, y'all do what you want. It's no big deal. It's the same stuff. But I like to get in here and sort of work the butter through. And eventually, like I said, here in just a minute, it will actually be more like kind of like a cornmeal. So you can see it's a little bit more coarse. I was able to work it through, mix it up. You have a few little chunks of butter here and there, but you know that bite's gonna be good. So we're gonna add our cup of milk. If it's a little bit too loose, then, you know, a little bit footloose there, then we'll add a little bit of flour, okay? No, usually I don't. This is pretty good as far as measurements, but usually I don't because you don't have to, because then I'll mix it over here, the dough, in the flour anyway. So you don't want it too dry. There's a balance here and you'll figure it out. Okay, so it's a little bit sticky. That's okay, that's perfect, because we're gonna put some flour down on the countertop. But what I wanted to do before I do that and get my hands all messy, hang on. My great-grandmother, who I grew up watching make biscuits like crazy, and even my own Nana, they would use things like this, your simple little jars, your mason jars, your canning jars. This was my great-grandmother's. I have several of these. This was their favorite drinking cups and their biscuit cutters. This is what she used. This is what I used to cut biscuits with as a kid. I, however, prefer one of these. You can get them on Amazon. I have a link down below. They're not expensive. I have 2 of these and I use them like crazy because not only does it cut, I like it because it cuts the biscuit, it can lift the biscuit, and you're not trying to kind of dig it out if it gets a little stuck. These are also great for chopping nuts. So each their own, do what works for you. But I like being able to just stamp down, stamp up, because remember what I always tell you? You do not twist chubby checker. You don't do the twist, okay? You don't twist and shout on your biscuits because you don't want to seal the edges, because you want that biscuit to rise up, girl. So this is why I personally prefer one of these. I also prefer a French rolling pin. So easy to use. I don't even use my other one anymore. And some people make drop biscuits. Some people just pinch them off. Whatever you want to do. I mean, however you want to roll with it. My Nana does drop biscuits. So I put a little bit of flour on it. Look, it's not even sticking. Barely any flour on it. And it's roller derby. Woo! So I stopped just for a second, washed my hands off so I could film this real quick and show you the butter. That is going to be so good. Now, what I do is I will take this dough and I will flip it over at least one time. I may work it out a little bit. Sometimes I do it twice. Sometimes I don't, actually layer it at all, okay? Just depends on the time and what I'm doing, how fast I'm trying to move. I'm going to do it one time so you can see it. Okay, so I've got the skillet out. It is super duper hot. Please be careful. And I'm gonna put this butter on here. Hot as blazes, y'all. So I just did a nice little pat of butter. Gotta move to the groove like sandwich bread. Gonna come over here. Down, up, down, up. That one's gonna be a little bit weird, so we'll come on down and flop it over again. Just gonna pick up the biscuits and place them right there. Real quick. Don't want to burn myself. You kind of want to move fast. Plus, see right here, I've got butter in these biscuits, so you really want to get them in there. Now, I may not, watch this. I'm probably just going to go with it here. It's a little bit wet because I moved it over. It's fine. The dough's getting warm too. Well, we might want to roll it. It's a little thick. Okay, have to move fast because that butter starts heating up in that dough. You got to move, okay? So here's the deal. So we got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. You're going to get, depending on the size of your cutter and how many times you layer over, you'll get anywhere from 6 to 8 biscuits usually, okay? Just depends on the size of that. And if I hadn't layered it, I probably would have squeezed out at least one more biscuit. So do you want smaller, flatter biscuits, or do you want big old fat, thick biscuits, more cat head like as much as possible? It's up to you. You do what you like in your kitchen. Okay, so I'm gonna set the timer. It's already preheated 425. That cast iron is hot, hot, hot. I'm gonna set the timer for about 15 minutes. That's a good basis. Could be up to 18 to 20, depends on your oven, depends on how you've made them. So just eyeball it. Some people put their biscuits together tighter so that they rise. I just go with it. Just go with it. All right, you're looking at actually about 16 minutes because it started beeping and I had to run and get my phone and all of that. So you're looking at right at 16 minutes. It's still beeping back there, hear it? So this is what they're looking like. You can make biscuits 100 different ways. Do what works best for you. But the goal here is to show you that not only can you make it 100 different ways, but you should know how. Make it with what you have available at the time. All right, that's all you need is a fine homemade biscuit, whatever topping you like on that, different gravies, but you've got to have, look at that, Cherokee purple homegrown tomato. We appreciate you being here today. It's time for breakfast. Hope you're doing well. Like, subscribe, and share. Just get in the kitchen and make those biscuits, honey. Make them 100 different ways. You're going to be pleased at how much you learn, and your belly will love it too. All right, guys, we'll see you on the next video.